Hi, this is Burr Stewart with another model railroading operations video. As you know, we try to stay focused on what we're doing, but we get distracted by Brian Elchlepp's F units. Sometimes it's sounder commuter trains, which don't belong on my 1973 Seattle area layout whatsoever. And then Robin brings over British engines that we've never heard of or seen before this far away from the United Kingdom. But we've been working in West Seattle, and for some reason we decided to inaugurate the new steel mill there with a British Gronk, which is a shunting engine, as they call it in Britain. We call it a switcher here in the U.S. By having the Gronk ship a load of British coal into the new steel mill, and to do so by an exciting trip through Lego Town, which I don't think we've ever seen this much detail on this channel. So stay tuned and let's get started. What you see here is an OO scale model of a Class 08 shunting engine, otherwise known as a switcher. But it's an engine that replaced the steam switchers, and there were quite a few of them built. And in this case, one of these engines has miraculously made it all the way out across the United States, well, across the Atlantic Ocean and then across the United States, and across the Cascade Mountains, and down the foothills from Stevens Pass, and entering the Delta Yard in Everett, Washington, USA. What an amazing thing.
Not impossible. I just push stuff back.
Wait for it.
Put one there. Put the switches out of there. Yeah, there's the 750.
Oh, very nice. That wasn't even a bang, was it? That was a glide. What are we going to call that? A smooth kiss. This is a Bachmann engine that Robin Peel just recently purchased and brought over here. And I'll put the picture of the box that it came in so you can see what product this is. It seems to run extremely well. As you hear now, it's coasting. It's passed through the Delta Yard and is headed over towards Inner Bay and eventually down to inaugurate our new steel mill in West Seattle. A few minutes later, our Gronk has picked up a loaded coal car with a brake van and is heading through Lego Town. The cardboard box contains some tanks that we're going to be using for a future oil refinery area. You can see here we have a construction zone on Lego Town. We have a car barge over on the back wall, a car wash octane, a movie scene here where some sort of a movie is being shot, and a grocery store full of groceries, some sort of a Lego truck that's delivering supplies, a garbage truck, a steam engine display that I built to show how steam engines work. And this is the Boeing plant at Boeing Field where they work on the space programs. There's also airplanes at Boeing Field there on the right. And now we cross over the Duwamish Waterway in order to get to West Seattle. See, I have a mirror back there because I'm trying to figure out what to do on the backdrop in this particular area. This is a pretty momentous day. I've been looking forward to laying the track in West Seattle and using some kind of a temporary building for the steel mill so we can get started with the operations. You want to spot that coal in the steel mill?
Could do. I don't know what that is.
It just happened that Robin brought this engine over on this particular day when the track had been laid enough to do some operations. So that's what we did. You can see the gray weight over there. We're still gluing down track, but we have enough track to do this operation.
Yep.
But that doesn't mean we're going to do it smoothly. We'll just do it as well as we can do it. Now, the first thing that's happening here, this train came in on the main line, but it needs to uncouple the brake van and leave it there so it can do a runaround maneuver after it's dropped off the coal car. You with me? Takes a little while to uncouple cars, but that's part of operations. And now that switch needs to be flipped. Hello? Is anybody there? No, I'm wrong. It was flipped. I haven't put the switch machines in the ground throws yet, so it'll be easier to tell what's happening when we do that.
Extraordinary.
Now we've backed onto the mill lead. We'll be showing that more later in the video. But this is the lead track, and all of the switches that go into the mill are fed by this one track. You can hear that wind in the background. I was using a fan to dry the glue under the weights on the left side there, and it just worked out great that it simulated the wind that might be blowing on this waterfront scene from across that water. It's pretty cool. Hey, I didn't intend it that way, but it sure worked out well. So Robin spotted this coal car inside the steel mill. And then later we realized it needed to be in a different location in the plant, and so we came back and re-spotted that car, but stay tuned for that. Right now we just want to show off this beautiful engine. Really got interesting details. Like I say, there were quite a few of these in Britain after the steam era, and I never got to see one myself, but I'm sure some of you that are watching are familiar with rail fanning these engines, the early diesel-electric engines. Now you see we're going to run around this brake van so that we can return up to the rest of the layout. 3 toots means we're backing up. So that's why he flipped that switch. Now he's going to run around between the main on the left here and the siding on the right and pick up that brake van. Now here he's going through the yard ladder, as it's called, where all the tracks in the West Seattle yard fan off from this main track. And we'll be operating in this West Seattle yard in the future, so you can look forward to other camera angles and operations here. But for now, this is the very first operation we ever did in this town, as you see from the weights of the glue drying on some of the track that we were just laying. In the background there is the hillside of Queen Anne and Magnolia neighborhoods in Seattle. See, I haven't even put all the track in yet. But we had enough to do this first operation. Now, after coming around that tan-colored switch there that he's on now, he was able to back onto the brake van and pull it back up. Looks like he didn't quite couple it right, but you can fix that. I should mention that Robin has converted a lot of his OO scale rolling stock to have Katy couplers so that he can run it over here, which is fun for us and fun for you if you enjoy these videos. There's a big shipyard in Harbor Island, which is on the backdrop there. But that's for another time. See, here's the mirror. It's kind of an interesting effect. I'm not sure if we'll keep it. And now our little British switcher has done its job, has inaugurated the steel mill, and is heading back up the hill, back through Lego Town, which we're going to convert to Harbor Island soon. So a few minutes later, I decided we really needed to have a North American prototype engine do some switching on the very first day that we were operating the steel mill. So I asked Aidan if he would take the Milwaukee GE 44-ton switcher, which we used in a recent video, although we had two of them tied together. I asked him if he would spot a covered hopper there at the steel mill and also put the slag cars in the correct track where the British coal car is currently occupying. So basically this was a 3-point switching move that needed to happen. And so it was a little complicated. Also, I hadn't finished laying the track, so we had a couple of little glitches with the engine, but nothing serious. And you can see Aidan is flipping the switches there. At the moment, they're all finger flick switches, but we will be putting switch machines or ground throws on all of them. Somehow that phone miraculously appeared on the scenery. And now we're spotting the hopper to get it out of the long cut of cars there so he can actually work with it. Now, you just saw him uncouple that car in a very unprofessional manner by picking up the trucks and disengaging the couplers. This is frowned on for a variety of reasons by many layout owners because it involves getting your fingers all over the car and possibly damaging the details. But of course, using an uncoupling pick presents the risk of damaging details as well and possibly damaging the coupler or freeing the coupler spring to fly across the room. So anyway, uncoupling HO scale cars is a fraught topic, which I'm not going to really go into today. There were a number of times in the next couple of minutes that Aidan picked up cars, and I edited most of those out of this video. The first thing he did was to drop off those cars on the end there and just return with the slag cars to pick up that hopper. I think that backdrop worked out really well. I really feel like I'm in West Seattle here. I haven't said anything about the steel mill, but that's an old Sudum kit, a metal kit that was probably built 30 or 40 or more years ago that I purchased at a swap meet. And it's actually a engine house kit. But I'm repurposing it as a steel mill just temporarily until we can do a little more scratch building. Now, he lost power just before he was going to have a bang there. And that's because that turnout is a power routing turnout, if you know what that is. And I hadn't put the switch machine on it yet. So it was just sitting there causing electrical trouble. You see how the lever on the switch machine is sticking straight up in the air? That's because I hadn't installed it yet. All of this will be fixed in the next video, but the main thing we're celebrating today is that operations are now taking place in West Seattle. And we love that. After several years, I think it was even maybe before COVID when we went on a tour of the West Seattle steel mill, and we're just blown away by how scary it was to heat up scrap metal and turn it into rebar. As soon as I saw that plant, I thought we have to have a model of that here. Now, our engine has come off the siding and back onto the main, so the next thing it has to do is go through a crossover to that switching lead for the steel mill, which we saw in a previous shot with the Gronk. Aidan's holding his hands at the ready to flip that switch as soon as he clears it with the covered hopper. Get ready. There he goes. So now he can back in towards the plant.
Yeah, tracklay.
But he's still got some work to do because he needs to move that coal hopper. What do they call it? Mineral wagons. In Britain, they call the coal hoppers mineral wagons. And he's first going to spot this covered hopper. And what they used these covered hoppers for at a steel mill was to collect the dust from the baghouse. The dust from the furnace had all kinds of little metal particles in it, and they would ship the dust back to Montana for processing to turn it back into steel that they could put back into the vat. So I've cut some of Aidan's shenanigans out of this so that you don't have to see him digging that car out of the steel mill. And you saw the building itself shudder there. No problem. We'll get back to that later. Now he's pulled that mineral wagon out where it was incorrectly spot. He's repositioned the steel mill on the layout and testing to make sure he doesn't hit it with a car. And now he's going to spot that mineral wagon outside, which is where I think they would have loaded the coal to power the plant. Now the next thing he's going to do is spot those two slag cars, the empty slag cars there. And of course, I guess you could say this officially inaugurates me as a steel mill modeler, and I have two empty slag cars, so I'm going to have to figure out something put in them that will look like hot molten slag coming out. And that's a modeling challenge that we'll discuss later. See there, he's doing that whole pick up the car thing again. I don't think that was really necessary, but that's okay. It's also not necessary to have your phone on the layout like that either. However, we are getting the job done of setting up the steel mill for the very, very first time ever. Now, I believe what's going to happen now is that Aidan's going to talk to me about what to do next, and I'm going to tell him that the best thing is just to back this train back into Lego Town, which is where it had been parked originally.
Then I will reassemble and keep it there.
And we're going to call this a mission accomplished. And the next thing I clearly need to do is come back and paint that gully so that it doesn't look like foam, but it actually looks like scenery. So you'll see that in the next video too. Well, you did want to see the other distractions that I mentioned at the beginning. So this is a picture of 5 F units that Brian Elchlepp brought over.
I don't know how I got on this kick. I've had 2 F units forever, and I've done 3 in the last 2 months.
We'll have more on F units in the future, and if you look back, there are some in the past. So on this same day, Magnus had brought over some of the new Rapido bi-level coaches to test. And as you hear, you're going through the squealer. Now, this is something worth thinking about. Whenever you buy a piece of equipment from a manufacturer, it's best practice to check the wheel gauge, because once in a while, not too often, wheel gauge will be incorrect. Now, Magnus brought these 3 cars over to run on my layout and see if they all worked fine. And he ran around, and they all did, except for one spot where he had a derailment on one of the trucks of one of the cars. And we fussed with it a bit, examined it, and we finally figured out that it was slightly out of gauge. And we were able to use a pair of pliers to very gently nudge the wheel into the correct gauge using the NMRA track standards gauge. And now he was able to run at a fairly high speed all around the layout. So with that, I hope you've enjoyed this video. We've inaugurated the West Seattle Steel Mill. We've gotten to know a new kind of British engine, the Class 08 Gronk. And we've done operations, which we have to do sometimes because we call this a series of operations videos, even though it seems like half the time my videos are just sort of watching trains run around and we're not actually doing operations. So I hope you've gotten something out of this and you enjoyed your trip through the Lego town for the first time, as well as the switching in West Seattle for the first time. So for now, this is Burr Stewart wishing you much fun with trains.